What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode. I'm excited about this one today. We're going to be talking about rainwater catchment tanks versus drilling a well. We're going to compare the price of each of those, some pros and cons of each. That way you can make an educated decision on your homestead what your plan of action is going to be. Now, full disclaimer, we have drilled a well. It's an incomplete well, but I've got some really clear numbers and I've got some really clear pros and cons about drilling a well versus a rainwater catchment tank system. Now, with that being said, obviously you clicked on this video for a reason. Now, you may be building a house and you've got to have a legit water source. You can't run the house off of rain tanks. So you're going to have to drill a well. I'll give you a really clear picture on what that's probably going to cost you. Now, if you want to be totally off grid, then obviously you can probably go the rain tank route. You're just going to have to really conserve water. It just depends on your level of like how luxuriously do you want to live. But ultimately you can gain some water security, so to speak, through both of these routes. I think one of them has more guarantees than the other one, especially depending upon the climate that you live in. So let's jump into it. Let's talk first about drilling a well. Now, we drilled a well a couple of years ago. It is an incomplete project, and when we drilled that well, they were charging, I believe, $35 to $45 a foot to drill. I think we ended up paying $40 a foot. I think their low price was $35, but they had actually jumped, I believe, to $40 by the time they had gotten to me, and I believe they were even raising their prices even more. Now, your drilling costs are going to vary depending upon where you're located in the, you know, if you're in the United States, for example, it's going to completely vary depending upon your state. If you're in another country, I would just shop around and see. But let's just say it is $35 to $45 a foot. We ended up drilling to 180 feet, and with our casing, which is the pipe that they lay, I believe, for like the first 30 foot, we ended up, I believe, at like $7,200 total. Now, that was just for the drilling alone. Like, that's just for the hole in the ground. And it is an incomplete project. Now, here's the part that sucks. We're only getting like maybe 2 gallons per minute. And that was actually in the spring when they drilled that. So that's not even in a drought period like in July or August when it's blazing hot and we're in a drought. So we're only getting 2 gallons a minute, spent $7,200, and the project's completely incomplete. Because we're only getting 2 gallons per minute, we need a storage tank. And so basically, from running my numbers, we needed probably another $10,000 to $12,000 to complete the project. So we're almost looking at almost 20 grand, almost 20K just to complete the project. And I don't even know if that would be enough water to run a typical household with normal water usage. The main reason we drilled it is because at the time we were running a market farm, we were expanding our market farm, and we needed an option for water outside of a municipal water source because it got pretty pricey pretty fast to irrigate a market farm without having a water well on a municipal source. So ultimately, though, our water well only getting 2 gallons a minute, which that sucks. That's like a trickle. That's not good. You want a lot more than that, obviously. We're at $20,000 to complete the project. Again, we have not completed it. But 20 grand, that's a lot of money just to get 2 gallons of water per minute. Now, I will say this, the pro to drilling a well is if you hit a good water source and you get a great flow, or you hit an artesian well or something, then you're in a fantastic position. But the con to drilling a well is we only drilled to 180 feet. Sometimes you could drill up to 500 feet. Obviously, if you're drilling to 500 feet at $40 a foot, that's going to add up very, very quickly. So we only went to 180 and we ended up spending $7,200 just on the drilling. But the thing about drilling a well, it is not guaranteed that you're going to hit water. Unless you really know for sure that you're going to hit a lot of water, it's simply just not guaranteed. You could drill and drill and drill. I've heard of stories, people drilling to 500 feet, not hitting water. So they literally drilled a $30,000 hole in the ground and didn't get a drop of water. So that's the big risk in drilling a well to me. I'm not happy about us spending that money, and if I had to go back and do it all over again, I would actually go the rain tank route. Ultimately, I know that for a lot of people, they're wanting to drill a well because they want their entire homestead to be off-grid. They want their water source to their home to be not dependent on a municipal source, or maybe you're required, like you've got to drill a well. Okay, well, just be prepared. You could spend, 10 to 30, $10 to $50,000. The other thing is a lot of well drillers, because there's not a lot of them now, you can actually be on a wait list for up to a year. I've heard of even a longer wait list than that. We got on their wait list, ended up getting them out like 6 months earlier because I think they had someone that potentially canceled. So they were able to get to us earlier. A lot of well drillers have a long wait list, just FYI. Now let's talk about rain tanks. If I had to do this all over again, because again, I ultimately was just wanting to create some sense of water security for our property and for irrigation, I would have gone the rain tank route. When you look at rainwater catchment tanks, obviously it's going to depend on what climate are you in. So for example, here in Greenbrier, Arkansas, we get on average 50 inches of rain per year. With the calculations, and I'm not going to do all the math on this, but if we get 50 inches of rain per year, I believe we can capture, I think that comes out to around 43,000 gallons of rainwater. Now, we're not going to be able to capture all that. You're going to lose some to evaporation, lose some to runoff, etc. Your first flush system. So you're not going to be able to capture all that. But when you look at rain tanks, you can generally purchase rain tanks for around $1 per gallon. So for example, a $2,000 gallon rain tank is going to cost you around $2,000. Now these are general numbers, but I could have gotten two 2,000 gallon rain tanks for $4,000. Now of course you're going to have to get them shipped. You got to set them up. So let's just say it cost me $5,000 to get those set up. Well, I have the opportunity to be able to hold 4,000 gallons of water in my rain tanks to irrigate, to be backup if crap hits the fan. That's just with me calculating that size. You could go up to 3,000 gallon rain tanks, or you could do 4 1,000 gallon rain tanks. You get my point. Is I could have spent that $7,200 and gotten a guaranteed return on my investment to be able to hold that much water on my property. So if I had to do it all over again, that is the route I would have gone. Because I know for sure, on average, in Arkansas, it's a pretty wet climate and humid, that we're going to get 50 inches of rainfall a year. And I'm going to be able to capture a lot of that. I could capture even more of that depending upon how many tanks I wanted to put up. But you can kind of see here, this is a guaranteed route. If you spend the money on the tanks, if you get rainfall, you're not in the desert, that you're going to be able to capture rainwater. You're not going to be able to capture every ounce of the rain that falls from the sky, but you're going to be able to capture a lot of it depending upon the size of your roof. And so ours is 1,400 square feet, and the 43,000 gallons came from that calculation if we were to capture all of the rain that hit that roof based on a 1,400 square foot home. We have the opportunity to capture that much water. Now the cons to the rain tanks, over time you potentially will have to replace the rain tanks if they're made from that plastic material. You could do in-ground tanks. That may be a better option if you have the money. That's going to be a little bit more expensive, but they do make in-ground concrete rain tanks for you to store water. I think that is the best option if you're going with the rain tank route, because if you've got those tanks in the ground, for one, they won't freeze. Two, they're going to maintain a really solid temperature. And three, they'll last forever in comparison to the above ground rain tanks. That is going to be more costly. But again, a guaranteed route, drilling a well, really not guaranteed at all. It's almost like gambling in my opinion. And one thing to think about with a well too is you can hit water, you can be getting good flow, and at some point in the lifetime of that well, the well can simply just dry up. Completely go away. It dries up in the middle of the summer and you literally do not have water. If you are thinking about doing rain tanks, I would highly recommend this book, Rainwater Harvesting for Dry Lands and Beyond by Brad Lancaster. Very, very popular book on rainwater harvesting. I'm not paid to tell you about this book or anything, but it's a fantastic book, and I'll put a link to this down in the comments.